right, it is time to get into our latest off-season breakdown and here at Field of 68. And we welcome in our newest member, former Xavier Musketeer, Kenny Frease. Kenny, good to have you on board. First of all, I think we're breaking some news here that you're joining the Field of 68 network and you'll be on After Dark this year. And this was the perfect place to kind of get started, breaking down Xavier's off-season. Giving them a grade at the end. I hope you're not going to be too easy on your alma mater here.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a little too much optimism with them sometimes, but we'll see.
No, that's good though. Listen, I'm optimistic too, but I was optimistic a year ago at this time, I think. Maybe not this time. I think it was right around now. And then we found out that they were going to be without two projected starters for the year in Zach Freemantle and Jerome Hunter. And most programs, that's going to be very difficult to deal with. There's a team that went 16-18, almost 500 in the Big East, didn't make the NCAA tournament. I think Sean Miller will bounce back this year, but again, we still have some question marks. The good news is Fremantle's back, fully cleared. All accounts are he looks good, and I don't know if he's the old Zach Freemantle.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the biggest question right now, because if he's able to pick up where he left off, you're looking at a pretty good candidate for first team All Big East, if not, even better than that. So that's going to be an interesting storyline. The biggest difference between this year and last year is, Xavier had a pretty good backcourt last year. I mean, they had some guys that could score. 3-point shooting obviously was a problem, but this year it's a complete opposite. They got shooters everywhere. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to watch. But like you said, if Fremantle's able to come back, or Fremantle's coming back, if Hunter's able to come back, and play at a good level. I mean, he was one of the best six men in the Big East when Fremantle went down in the tournament, or right before the tournament. And then there's still some question marks with Hughley, Traore, Fletcher's coming off the injury. I mean, there's a lot of potential, and it's a good problem to have coming from last year where our front court was almost non-existent.
And again, like the guards last year, listen, Quincy Oliveri was not great in the preseason, and the staff was a little bit worried.
Yeah.
Quincy was phenomenal last year. Absolutely phenomenal. Des Claude leaves. So they lose their top two scorers, but they bring in a lot of dudes on the perimeter here, right? I mean, obviously, again, McKnight is back.
Right.
How do you see McKnight this year as opposed to last year when they do add a bunch of transfers to help him out and also push him? I mean, like Ryan Conwell's going to push him. You got Marcus Foster. You got some of these other guys that I think are going to help.
Yeah.
But what was your take of McKnight last year, and where can he take the next step?
In my opinion, McKnight this year, steady as she goes. I think that he has such a good command of the floor, and he leads by example. He's not a super outspoken guy. He's not all over media talking, Twitter, all that stuff. But he gets in there, he does his job, he leads the team. And having a guy like that come back when you have the talent with Conwell and Maddox, who I think are going to be your starting three guards, there's a lot of scoring there, and they play fast. And so when you have Fremantle, and then if you think about a guy like Traore, who is super athletic, Hughley kind of changes the look of the team a little bit, right? He's a big body like me,
big boy,
6'10". I don't know exactly, 275 is his listed weight, but I don't know exactly where he is for that, so I can kind of commiserate with him on that. But it definitely.
What are you trying to say, Kenny? You trying to say you had some weight issues back in the day?
I may have had a couple issues, but Coach Matt can tell you more about that. But yeah, so I mean, but I think that they're able to bring a lot of different looks. Throwing Dalen Swain at the 4, that's going to be a really interesting look with Fremantle at the 5. They're going to be playing fast.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see how Coach Miller kind of puts all these puzzle pieces together.
They're deep.
Yes.
They're deep, and like Sean Miller's teams generally are not this deep. Where you look at it and you're like, okay, if Jerome Hunter does come back, you're talking like 10 deep that can play.
They can really play.
And again, that's a good thing because, as you know, if you're only going 7 deep sometimes, towards the end of the game, some guys will wear down playing extended minutes. Where now you talk about some of these guys being able to play, maybe 28 minutes as
Right.
opposed to 32, 33. And
Mhm.
sometimes that is a difference at the end. All right, let's talk about a couple of these transfers.
Okay.
Because, listen, I really love these guys on the perimeter that they brought in. Like, I'm a huge Ryan Conwell guy.
Mhm.
First of all, he came from Indiana State,
Right.
winning last year, right? He's
Yeah.
big. Like, that was the other thing last year about their backcourt. Like, I love Quincy, but
Yeah.
like when you put, Quincy, honestly, you put him and McKnight together, you're like, defensively, you're limited. You're very
Yeah.
limited what you can do. Now you add Conwell, who's a legit 6'4", Marcus Foster, also like 6'3", 6'4".
And big body too.
Big bodies. They're men. They're
Mhm.
big. They're strong. Defensively, they're going to be better. Offensively, even imposing their will, being
Yep.
able to get downhill, it's a big difference. And Conwell, to me, and again, you said it off the bat here, shooting. Conwell shot like 40 plus.
Yep.
Marcus Foster can shoot 40-ish.
Mhm.
Like, these are dudes that, again, can space the court now. Fremantle down low. You want to double them?
Right.
Go ahead, like, double
Yeah.
them. These dudes can knock it down.
I just saw an interesting stat the other day. Maddox made 22 threes last season outside of 25 feet. Like that. I mean,
We haven't even talked about Maddox yet. We didn't even talk about Maddox.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, he can shoot. And the other, I love that Conwell's a lefty, right? Like that adds such a crazy dynamic, especially with how fast Coach Miller plays. You're running down the court and you're thinking, all right, who do I got? Maddox or Conwell? Who's I'm taking arrows in the back right now. I got to get to this guy quick.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a really interesting dynamic in transition watching those two guys.
And you mentioned Dalen Swain. So I've been told he looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
So far. Like,
he looks like a man. I mean, the biggest thing that popped out to me watching him on the Sean Miller podcast, the dude looks like a lottery pick. I mean, he's like the eye test.
Part.
Yes, the eye test, he definitely passes.
Yeah, the question for him is, can he shoot? Right? Like,
yep.
but he doesn't need to shoot 40.
No.
Make one of three. Take 3 a game. Make one. Keep the defense honest. But now he's gained like 25, 30 pounds, something like that. He looks like a different player. And again, now you're talking about having, like, there's a versatility with this team, right? There's a lot of different pieces that I think Sean can kind of have some fun with, trying to figure out matchups that he can take advantage of, especially in the Big East. Like, it's hard when you're limited and you've only got so many bullets. Now you've got more bodies that are capable, and you've got guys who can do different things.
Yeah, I mean, with Dalen especially, I think Xavier at their best this year is, unfortunately for him, Xavier at their best this year is going to be him averaging 4 or 5 points a game because they have so much firepower everywhere. They're lacking a little bit in some of the play. Maybe defensively, you can say that they have a little bit of a problem. Like, Maddox is a smaller guard, Trey's a smaller guard, but then, like you were saying, Conwell and Foster, you have some bigger size there. But with Dalen, I think that rebounding, toughness plays, getting those straight line drives where he's dunking on people, like those are going to be the things that really lifts up the team, and that's going to be the way that he impacts the games.
Inside, we talked about Fremantle. You mentioned Lucina Traore, Long Beach State transfer. He's averaged, I think, double, maybe certainly, I think 10 rebounds a game for the last 2 years. Elite athlete. So he kind of complements Fremantle in a lot of ways, right? You could play those dudes together. Now, again, Fremantle likes to score in the post. That's the one thing I would maybe worry about a little bit. What do you, but Traore's a guy who can be a lob threat, who can obviously run the floor, who can block shots, rebound, finish, right? Like, you're not going to probably throw the ball to him that much down in the post.
He's going to be in a dunker spot and playing off drives and things like that, which I think that with the guards they have some heady guards. They know the game well. They make the right plays. They take the right shots. So, yeah, I mean, Traore is that's a like kind of 1-2 punch I'm talking about with Hughley and Traore. If you can get Hughley to a point where he's dominating and playing like he was at Oklahoma, I mean, that's a big difference.
How about at Pitt? I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
at Pitt when he was
Yeah.
healthy, he
Yeah.
was really good. Then he got hurt, and I think his body just he let it
Yeah.
go. He let it
Yeah.
go.
But it's really difficult when you got a big frame.
Yeah.
It's tough when you've gotten injured or when something's happened to really keep that shape up because, you know, it's easy to put on weight when you got a big body like that. But I mean, I can tell you when you look at Xavier's strength coach, Coach Miller, he's going to be ready. I can
They're not
promise you
going to
that.
let him get away.
No.
Well, and now you see the ending too.
Yeah.
You know, if you're Hughley, you know what you were
Right.
under Jeff Capel for a while, and they were talking about him being an All ACC first team guy.
Yeah.
Coming back 2 years ago, and again the injuries. So you wonder if maybe this sense of urgency helps him a little bit, and also
Yeah.
the fact that again you are going up against these two dudes every day in practice. If you're
Right.
not in good shape, you're going to get exposed quickly by Fremantle and Traore.
Well, and I think that that's the key. It's that if he doesn't get in shape, he's not going to play. You know what I'm like? That's the big deciding factor. And you're looking at a guy that, you know, he's got the body to be a high level, if not NBA player, high level European player, whatever it is. This is how he's going to make money in his life. And you're not going to do that if you don't get on the court with Xavier. So he has a lot of pressure on him to get that body right.
All right. So how confident are you that this team gets back into the NCAA tournament number one? I'm very confident. Like,
Yeah,
barring something crazy where they,
right.
again, knock on wood, injuries, I just don't see much of a scenario where Xavier isn't back in the tournament.
No, that would be an absolute disappointment for this team. I think last year about 5-6 games in, even before that a little bit, but like what you were saying when Hunter and Fremantle went down, you know, but even then there was still this optimism of the European guys. Djokovic is coming back, like all this stuff, like maybe. But I think with this year's team, like making it to the second weekend would be my thought process for them.
Whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of The Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYDhealing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system.
How were people around the program? Because you're around it,
Yeah.
obviously as a former player, also
Mhm.
somebody who does a podcast, the Xavier
Yeah.
podcast. Like, so you hear it a lot. How are the fans dealing with maybe the disappointment? Did they understand kind of what happened with losing 2 starters and the impact it would have, or at Xavier? Because again, the previous years, let's face it,
Right.
the previous years before Sean came back, I mean, it was 0 for 4.
It was
0 for
tough.
4 of
Yeah.
going to the tournament.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that before Miller came back, you had, like you were saying, 0 for 4, and then he comes back first year, Sweet 16, and they're like, all right, we're back now, and we can all kind of breathe easy. I don't think that the Xavier fans took it very well. Is just being around, going to games, doing the podcast, talking on Spaces, all these different things. Like there was a sentiment of like, we need to make sure that Miller's happy, because if this keeps happening, he's going to leave. So like I think that's where a lot of it came from. But at the same time, they weren't happy. They weren't happy with the outcome of last season, and there was really no grace given at all.
How much of a feel do you have for like NIL at Xavier, and whether, because I know there are a bunch of teams. I think I tweeted last year. I think there were like 6 teams that were at over 2 million in the Big East.
Mm-hmm.
Xavier was one of those.
Yeah.
How much is the support there? Are they happy with kind of where they're at? Because they again, you're not competing. There's certain teams you're not going to be able to compete with around the country,
right?
Money wise, let's face it. A lot of them are the ones that just got Calipari at Arkansas,
right?
Kentucky, Louisville. They're not going to be at that point. But obviously, with what they were able to get, and I think part of it, they went early in the portal, and I think honestly, going early helped some of these programs, because if you went late, it's supply and demand, right? You went late, you were going to be held ransom. You miss out on some dudes, you're held ransom. You got to pay a guy $1.5 million, $2 million. Xavier really never had to do that. They also didn't get like the huge name transfer.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have a pretty good feel for what they have NIL wise. I work closely with the Final 2%, which is like their collective. I have a pretty good feel for it. They've been very explicit with me not talking about numbers, just because, it's one of those things where keeping it a mystery helps you when you have less money.
Nobody knows.
Right. And which I don't necessarily agree with. On a rules standpoint, I think it should be something that's disclosed, and you have to be able to put that out there publicly.
It would be awesome if everybody knew. Here's why, Kenny. How cool would it be to see, like last year, a great example, Indiana State, where Commonwealth came from. Their total for NIL, they didn't make the tournament, but they were right there. Sure. Their total, I think, was something like $95,000 for their entire team. Like, that's insane.
Yeah. And I think that there needs to be a level of accountability. If you want to be the guy, you want to be making money. And, I don't disagree with these guys making money. I disagree with the way that it was with the roadmap from the NCAA, just like the way that they just Wild West, let it go, see what happens. And I think partially they did it because they were like, all right, you guys asked for it. Here you go. This is what you wanted. Yeah. But I don't agree with that side of it. I think that there could be some regulations put on it, just to not even to level the playing field, just to make it so that guys aren't playing on 4 different teams and saying, okay, I'm going to leave this team because they're going to give me $10,000 more, Yeah. But yeah, it would be interesting to see. And also just accountability from these guys. If you want to be a professional athlete, you need to be held accountable just like anybody in the NBA. You're making good money. They're making better money than a lot of guys in Euros.
I had a player call me. I put out a general figure of what he was asking for. And he called me and he said to me, how could you, I'm very disappointed that you did that. And I said, I get it, man, but like, you're a pro now. And he talked to me about the fact that the pressure that this was going to put on him now, because everybody knew what he was making. Mm-hmm. And I said, man, like, you're a pro, you're making more money than I am. Like,
that's part of the gig, man. The way that Xavier fans and just people in general treat you, even when I was playing, there was still that accountability on, ESPN, the fan base, whatever it is. And to some extent, when I was playing, I didn't agree with that because, like, that's my school. I'm an amateur athlete, whatever. And you have to deal with that stuff. It's not that I couldn't deal with it, but at this level now, for me, I used to kind of hold back when I would talk about Xavier players, but now, if you're not playing well, I'm gonna say something, because like, you're out here making money. You need to do your job.
Yeah, you're basically a pro. The high end guys, and even, I mean, honestly, even the mid-major guys that transfer up, I mean, they're making real money right now. They're making legitimate money that a lot of people would love in their lifetime to be making. So they should be. Again, I've always kind of walked that tightrope.
Yeah, it's tough.
I'll never criticize a high school player.
Right.
A college player, rarely. It would take something mammoth for me to really go, criticize them personally for something. And now it's like, you know what? It's kind of open season to some degree. You're still going to be, I'm still going to be cognizant of their college kids.
Right. Yeah.
But again, if you don't play well and you're making $2 million a year, like, okay, like
Yeah.
people are going to call you out for that. All right, what's your biggest concern with this year's team? I'm dying to know because I can't really figure it out. What do you think it is?
I would say, I mean, number one, staying healthy.
Healthy,
Right.
sure.
That's a big one. Number two, putting together these pieces in the front court. Are you able to put together a front court that's going to be competitive in the Big East? I have every expectation that they will, but you just never know with guys coming from different places, and you're kind of hodgepodging the team together. I think that would be that, and then I think that defensively there are some lineups that you see where you may be a little bit small, and so but other than that, I really have a good feeling about this year's team, and I can't wait for the season to start.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, injury is probably the one thing I worry about. X factor for me, it's Fremantle locking in and buying it, and really locking in. Like, can't be a defensive liability. Just be average. Be average, because we know how good you are offensively, right? And also mature, be accountable, and all that, man. Like, if you get that, listen, I remember seeing him at the Charleston Classic. It might have been his freshman year, maybe sophomore. And I was like, this dude plays so damn hard and with an edge, and all that is incredible. He's just, he's got to be, I guess, more consistent with his approach.
Yeah.
Would be the better way of saying it.
I mean, Sean Miller podcast, they did an episode with him. Yeah. And the way that he talked and the way that Coach Miller talked about him. Now, obviously, I know they're just putting on, it's a public thing. So I know you got to, whatever. I know the game.
Yep.
But at the same time, he talked about having the game taken from him, and how close he was to maybe never playing again if that foot doesn't get better or whatever. I think that he has a different outlook on just the game in general now, knowing how quickly it could be taken away from you. So I truly see him coming back. Even if he's not the player he was, which I think he will be, I think that he'll have the right attitude. And between him and Jerome Hunter, those two guys, Jerome Hunter especially, that dude, he's the heart and soul of the team. I mean, he's going to be such a huge part of the leadership of this team, even if he doesn't play a lot or whatever it is, whatever happens with him. So,
all right, before we go, we got to give grades.
Yeah.
We got to give grades here. So,
yeah. Now, I just real quick, are you talking about grades, kind of based on what everybody else has done, or grades based on what they've done for their program?
No, based on what they've done. They've done in the off season. So, for me, I'll start, and you can kind of follow on it. But I mean, I think you got to give them. I mean, again, the one loss was Des Claude, and I'm not sure he fit Sean Miller. I'm not sure he fit. I don't want to say it's addition by subtraction, because I don't think that's fair. Okay.
I've talked about this pretty extensively. I think
he'll do better in a new scenery. I think he can. Now he's at USC, right, with Musselman. I mean, I'm not sure that's the right scenery for him either, by the way.
Yeah.
Because Musselman and Sean are different, but alike in some ways, where they're MFers.
Yeah.
They're both like, if you don't play hard, and you don't play with an edge, and you don't defend, like, I don't know, man. So I would give Xavier, I'd probably give him an A-. I'd probably give him an A- in there. And again, maybe it sounds like I'm being too nice to a guy who was on field to 68, with Sean Miller.
Right.
But I can also Sean will tell you, like, I can be critical to him. I've been critical to him. I think he and the staff have done a really nice job, given the circumstances too, of putting together this group that has really addressed a lot of the key weaknesses on the team last year.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, they have 9 guys going to the transfer, or 10 guys going to the transfer portal. Yeah. And they put together a team that people are saying, I mean, I don't know, I shouldn't say people are saying, I'm saying, and I've heard a lot of people talking about, this is a NCAA tournament team. You go from under 500, you replace 10 guys with a group that you think that could possibly be a preseason top 25 team. I don't know how that's anything but an A. Like what else, what more could you ask for other than, I mean, I don't even know what else, what more could you ask for without seeing any of these guys play together, all of the other teams having to figure out their things too. I really think Xavier's in such a good spot that it would be tough for me to give them anything but an A right now.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think this is a team that, again, can be a second weekend team.
Yeah.
And again, what do you need, right? You need a bunch of good guards,
Oh,
older guards. We haven't even talked
Mhm.
about that. Like they've
Right.
got a bunch of older dudes too, which is
Yeah.
what you need right now.
Mhm.
And a good front court that, again, as long as Fremantle stays healthy, and I guess you could say even if he doesn't, you've got Hughley behind him,
Right.
you know. But to be honest, like the ideal would be Hughley playing 12, 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think so.
That would
I think
be,
so.
you'd have a hell of a team if he gives you 12, 15 quality minutes.
Yep.
And you've got all these other dudes up front. And, you know, if Swaim can make a jump, like that's also the X factor here that you know, we didn't talk about.
Yeah.
All right. So give me now, before we go, the breakdown of the Sean Miller pod. I've only watched, I think I watched the Fanta episode.
Yeah.
Maybe the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So I say, like, we've made Sean into a media star because this guy, there was nobody worse as a media when he came on. All right. So Kenny, when he came on for his first appearance on After Dark, first of all, nobody goes longer. Nobody talks longer than Sean Miller. And finally, he had to figure it out. Like, it took him some time that, hey, you know what? We need quick sound bites.
Right.
You can't talk for like 3-4 minutes straight and keep rambling.
Yeah.
And the other part was he learned, like, if you don't know what you're talking about, you're going to be exposed quickly. Yeah. He's a much better coach than media member, but he turned into one hell of a media member.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, the Sean Miller podcast is, number one, with Paul Frischer and Adam Baum at his side there. Like, they're both really good at what they do, and they kind of keep the ball rolling with scheduling things and making sure that they're getting content out and stuff. So I think taking that part of it off of his plate and kind of letting him be the idea guy and the draw for people to come in. It was a really fun experience doing it. I hadn't talked to him extensively for quite a while. So
really,
it was good to catch up with him.
Good. Well, listen, welcome to Field of 68. We are ecstatic to bring you on board. People see a lot more of you coming this season. I told you, you got to, you know, hit the books, do a little homework this summer, right?
I'm ready, man. I'm ready. I've
I've
already been going.
Get you involved, and you know, it'll get easier once the games start. It gets easier, but we knew with Xavier you'd be able to break this one down easy. And
this was an easy test for me to start. Yeah,
we started with an easy one. We threw you softball. We threw you softball to start. It'll get a little bit harder. The speed will pick up. So appreciate it, man, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds good, brother.
All right, there you have it. Xavier offseason grade. We both give him an A. I give him an A-. Kenny gives him a straight A for Xavier and Sean Miller for their offseason grade.